It was an early morning in Ponyville. Tails was making breakfast for him and Twilight, since Spike had already left the castle earlier that morning to help Rarity at her boutique. Twilight was just had gone down to the kitchen when she found that Tails had already made breakfast for both of them. She smiled and thanked them for the breakfast. As they were sitting there at the table, they were just talking about their plans for the day. Twilight said that she had a lot of plans since she had a lot of duties taking care of the School of Friendship since they recently had a big exam and that she needed to correct the test. And since Starlight was originally going to help her, but Starlight had to leave town for a couple of days for a family emergency since her father wasn't feeling well. So Tails decided he could help her since he didn't have any particular much planned for the day anyways. Twilight smiled and thanked her for that. After the breakfast, they went straight to the School of Friendship, where they went to her office and went through the papers. And what Tails didn't expect was going to be so many papers. It was at least over dozens of different papers there was at least 24 students at the school. So it took them maybe about almost 2 hours of correcting the answers. And at the time when they were finished, it was about lunchtime. And Tails suggested that they should go to somewhere and grab something to eat. And since Twilight and himself was now finished correcting the answers from the big exam that was previously, Twilight didn't have any other plans. In fact, also, she was actually getting quite hungry. So she agreed. So they went to this small restaurant in town to have something to eat. But even so, there was one thing that Tails was thinking of in his mind. That ever since he arrived to the Equestria almost 2 years earlier by a random accident, because the reason why he suddenly appeared in Equestria is because 2 years earlier, in his old world, he was fighting along with his friends against an enemy known as Dr. Eggman. And the last he remembered, the Chaos Control caused him to be transported to this world. At first, he had no idea where he had ended up. But he was found by Fluttershy near her college. He was injured, but luckily for her experience of taking care of animals, she had no problems in helping with him. And it took Tails quite a while to get used to living in a whole new world, with the knowledge that he would not be able to return to his old home. And he adapted quite fast in this new world. And in fact, he was quite fascinated by magic, knowing at least that the Chaos Emeralds in his old world was some form of magic, but having pony magic was one of the things that was completely unique to him. The fact also that he even made his own workshop near the castle, where he invented some things and even helped to repair some items that some ponies actually have, like cameras or basically items that he had. But during this 2 years period of living in Equestria, Tails had actually become very much close friends with Rainbow Dash and Applejack and Pinky. But for most of other things, just for over a year now, he had been having a big crush on Twilight. He knows that probably that she wouldn't be dating him since he's a fox and that she's a pony, and they are two different species, but despite that, his feelings for Twilight was always strong, and that's it. After they had left the restaurant, they went back to the castle to relax for the day, since they didn't have much planned for otherwise. Tails went to his room, just laying on the bed and thinking about his feelings for Twilight. He wished that he just could do something for her, to prove how she felt. He hasn't even told any pony about his feelings, not even any of his new friends, because he had no idea how to react to it. But he knows at least somebody that can actually have some good advice, and that would be Spike, because Spike is a dragon and that he is dating Rarity, two different species. But if he would have had to ask some pony else, it would have to be in Fluttershy. After all, she is dating Discord. Discord was a mix of different species, but he had no idea who to ask. If he should ask Fluttershy or even Spike. But he decided to go over to Fluttershy's cottage to ask her for some advice. He saw the Twilight Bird in the library, and he told her that he is just going out for a while since he didn't have anything else to do. She nodded, and he flew all the way to Fluttershy's cottage. Fluttershy was quite surprised to see him. "Hey, Tails, what are you doing here?" she said. "Oh, hey, Fluttershy. I'm actually here for... I need an advice." "Oh, sure, come in. You want some tea?" she asked. "Yeah, tea would be good." As he was sitting there, he felt a little bit nervous. And after she came back with the tea, she asked, "So, what do you have in mind you had the advice for?" At first, Tails didn't know how to even explain this to Fluttershy. But then he took a deep breath and said, "Well, I need advice of in love." She smiled. "Oh, I didn't know you were in love with somebody." She smiled. "Well, it is. Who is it?" she asked. At first, he was hesitating to even explain to her who this pony were. At first, he maybe made up a story. But she has always been so kind and honest to him. And it wouldn't deserve as much about lying who it can actually been. Then he said, "It's Twilight." She was a little bit surprised, but she smiled back and said, "Oh, have you..." "No, I haven't told her, or any pony actually," he said. I just don't know how. Or if she even liked me the same way back." "Tails, you don't know nothing if you don't ask her. You know that?" How did it happen between you and Discord, if I may ask?" Uh, "That's a little bit of a funny story, you know," she said. "Well, you see, Discord actually admitted to me about 6 months ago, when we were having tea, that he had a big crush on me, and he understood that I would not like him back in the same way." "Oh, but I told him I liked him that much as well. And, you know..." And Tails sat there a little bit silent. "So, what is your advice how to express my feelings for Twilight?" Fluttershy was a little bit silent for a moment, but was thinking for a good answer. "Well, how about this? How about you make her dinner? It's just like a romantic dinner for just the two of you, and then you're telling her how you like her." "Well, I could, but I'm not as a decent cook to eat otherwise." "Well, you can almost cook her something that's quite easy." "Yeah, I might do that," said Tails. After he finished the tea, he thanked her for advice and flew back home. And while he was flying back, he was curious to see how this reaction, and even though he was planning to do this for Twilight, But when he came back, Twilight wasn't even at the castle. Turned out she had left the castle for only to get some fresh air. So he decided to make the dinner for both of them. And she was actually out for at least a few hours. She wouldn't be back until like almost 5 p.m. So Tails actually had a good time. So he went to the kitchen, looked through the cooking books, and looked through the recipes that he was easily could make, and found one perfect one. It was just a salad basically with a chocolate cake as the dessert. And he noticed that Twilight sometimes prefers just a salad for lunch or dinner, so he made it. And when she came back, he told her that he had made dinner for both of them, since turned out Spike was gonna stay the night at Rarity's boutique. So she just smiled that it was actually good. She was actually getting hungry. And as she was sitting while they were having dinner, there was actually a lot of things that went through his mind. He wanted to immediately just tell her how he felt. But after dinner was finished and they had their chocolate cake dessert, he told Twilight that he had something to tell her. She looked at him a little bit surprised and asked what it's about. At first, he didn't know exactly which words to use, but then he said, "Twilight, for the past about a year now, I have been having this big crush on you. And this dinner was actually Fluttershy's idea that I should do for you. But I understand if you don't like me the same way back." Twilight was actually so shocked of this revelation of how he just told her how he felt. But then she smiled and said, "Tails, you're a true sweetheart, you know that? And I had to admit, I actually have been this strong feelings for you too for the past 6 months." "Wait, really?" he said. Mm-hmm. He was not surprised. He was not prepared for this. But then he asked her if she wanted to go out. And she said yes. They decided to go out the next day on a date to the restaurant. During the next day, Tails was quite nervous. The fact he even had told Spike and about this when he came back to the castle, and he was actually surprised, but he was actually happy for them. And even when he ran into Fluttershy, who asked him how they went, and he said that it went well, and now they're actually going out this evening for a restaurant as a date. She smiled and hoped that it goes well, even though when he took her to the restaurant, he was wearing a suit, like a tuxedo, and she was wearing a dress, and it was really unexpected for him, because this was his first official date ever. At first, both of us actually didn't know what to talk about, but especially Tails. Since this was his very first date ever, he had no experience, no knowledge how to even to make on what to do on the date. But luckily for Spike, gave Tails some advice what things to do and what things we're gonna talk about. After a while, the ice was broken between and they felt comfortable. And in fact, after the date was over, they went back to the castle and they sat in the library just reading some Daring Do together before going to bed. Twilight said that she had an amazing date and hoped that they could be going on some more soon. He smiled and nodded that he wished the same thing. And for the next couple of weeks, they actually went on several dates, either to the movies, restaurant, the picnics, or even stayed at the castle having a good reading books together for for as a date. But it happened that they even went on double dates with Spike, Rarity, or Fluttershy on Discord. And eventually, after about a month or so, they made it official. Twilight was actually happy for this. Their relationship between them was actually quite strong. But they hadn't even told any of her family after they had just made it official. But when they went to see Cadance and Shining Armor in Crystal Empire, they were stunned that they were now official, but they were just happy to see how they were working well together. Especially Cadance. She told Twilight, "Oh, Twilight, I'm so happy for you." And Twilight was smiling and said thanks for that. Because even her brother was like, "Twilight, you really are glowing of happiness of this. Tails really makes you feel happy, doesn't he?" "Yeah, he's quite special." But one day, only about after they had been dating for about 3 months, Tails was out flying by himself, and it was a little bit that windy day, but suddenly as he was flying around, he was actually approaching above the evergreen forest. Suddenly, a strong wind from the uncontrolled weather above the forest pushed him right down in the forest, and while he was flying down, he hit a lot of tree branches, and one of them was big, and he knocked him out unconscious. He fell on the ground, and some of the tree branches fell above him. Some actually was so big that even him couldn't carry. And at the same time, back in Ponyville, Twilight was getting a bit worried that since Tails hadn't even returned yet, and it was getting a little bit later in the afternoon, and he said that he would be back soon. So she started being a bit worried, but Spike told her that it's nothing had to be worried. Tails is strong, he's brave, and he's a good flyer. But as the evening came, there was still no signs of anything off from Tails. In fact, he hadn't even showed up. And now even Spike was getting a bit uneasy, a little bit worried. Because Tails has always returned, even if it's after sunset, but now it was 8 p.m. and it was pitch black outside. Only the wind and the full moon. Even though that Twilight wanted to go outside to look for him, but Spike told her not to, because it was a big windy storm outside, and it was not safe for flying around. Even despite Twilight was now a very skilled flyer than Alicorn, she would not even stand a chance against the strong winds. Spike told her they would look for Tails in the morning. That night, Twilight could not get much sleep, because she was worried about Tails. She did manage to get some sleep at least, but in the morning, she was at least happy the storm had passed. After breakfast, she along with Spike went to Sweet Apple Acres to ask Rainbow for help. Rainbow and Applejack, who was actually at the farm at the same time talking, they both agreed to help. So they went to Fluttershy's cottage to hope if she could be helped. So all of them went looking around. Tails, who was still in the every force on the ground, unconscious, hasn't even regained consciousness again. And there wasn't until like in the later afternoon when Spike suggested that they should probably look in the every forest. Twilight was asking why. Well, they had looking around in most of the outside of Ponyville, even near cottage of Fluttershy at Sweet Apple Acres, and by the lake near Ponyville, but not even in every forest, because that was the only place that they haven't even considered that he could have been in. But Tails Twilight said Tails wouldn't much go in there on purpose, wouldn't he? Considering how the most dangerous animals there, timber wolves, and even so, but we had to consider there's a possibility that he could end up in there for somehow, said Spike. And Fluttershy was like, Spike may have an idea, had a point. It's possible that Tails may have just took shelter in the woods somewhere, or he could even been hurt. Sugar Cube, said Applejack to Twilight, they have a point. We had to look in there. Alright, let's go, said Twilight. Even now she was a lot worried about all of that statements. They all went to the Evergreen Forest, and by the entrance, Twilight suggested that they should split up in teams or go separately so they have a better chance to find Tails faster. Even at first that the others thought that was probably not a good idea, but they did anyways. And after half an hour, Spike found Tails on the ground, still unconscious. He yelled out to them, and Tails was laying there, and they removed some of the branches above him. They tried to wake him, but no reaction. But at least he was alive. Twilight was just worried that something bad would have happened. So they took him to the hospital, where the doctor could make one conclusion. He had actually only received a minor concussion, and he will make a full recovery within the next couple of days. Twilight took him back to the castle, where she looked after him. He actually regained consciousness that same evening. At first, he didn't remember what actually happened. But when they told him that they found him in the Evergreen Forest and saw 3 branches above him and that he had a concussion, then it slightly came back to him. He remembered that he was flying above the forest and a strong wind pushed him fast down, and they hit his head on something hard, which made him pass out. He was just happy to be okay. And the fact, Twilight looked after him, made food for him, even rented dinner do for him, and he was just happy. From that day on, their relationship remained strong and only grew stronger for each single day. And 10 years went on, and Tails was now 18 years old. He felt that he was ready to propose to Twilight. He had already got the ring and had told Spike about his idea. The fact, Tails took Twilight to the restaurant where they already had the first date and proposed to her, and she said yes. She actually was happy that happened. The fact also, she was quite happy. She had asked Fluttershy to be her maid of honor, and Tails had asked Spike to be his best man. They actually had a wedding in Canterlot. And after that, they actually went to Saudi Arabia for a whole 2 weeks at a honeymoon. But they also had one special gift from Discord. The fact that Discord actually offered to make Tails immortal, since Twilight was now immortal herself, and he accepted it. Both actually had a great time on their honeymoon, doing a lot of sightseeing and just having a great time. And after being married for 2 years, they wanted to start a family. But since they were 2 different species and they were unable to have any children of their own, so they decided to adopt 2 children. They adopted a boy, a Pegasus, and a daughter, another Pegasus, who were siblings. They were actually quite happy to have a fox as a parent, as a father, and after all this, despite what Tails went through all those years ago when he could have just vanished in the Evergreen Forest, he was just happy to have met Twilight all those years ago. Even Twilight was just happy to have found her true love within Tails. And having two children of them together was the most amazing to have. And this is how Tails and Twilight Sparkle found a true love and got a big fam together. The end.